Okay, that seems like it. Thanks a lot. I'm going to try and keep my time here. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you who are in the room, who were in the rooms, the 2 rooms this morning, for a very interesting day. We've had a flavor of the issues that we're grappling with when we're trying to implement the innovations against poverty that I'm going to talk about, and also a flavor a bit from the outside, how other people work and what they're doing, and some of the issues that we should take into account when we move forward. But I just want to spend a few minutes on the program itself, the Innovations Against Poverty. I don't know how much all of you know about IAP. So I'm going to start off with a bit of why and how, about the program for those of you who are not familiar. I know a lot of you are, very much so, being applicants and successful applicants, being projects that we've funded. But I also realize that some of you are new to the program. I want to give some examples. Apart from those that we've heard about already, I have a few examples of projects that are in the portfolio. And then we have recently, actually came hot off the press today, come out with a knowledge exchange report that Caroline Ashley has been the main editor of, that where we start to draw some lessons from the portfolio. We've done a portfolio review as well of the portfolio. So we're starting to look at not only the specific projects, but also the portfolio. So I'm just going to sort of summarize some of what's in this report towards the end. So very short facts about Innovations Against Poverty. It is a Sida program. It's Sida funded. And the contracting with the projects is with Sida. That was started 1.5 years ago. The team that is here is mainly from PwC, but we are a consortium that is led by PwC, so there are a number of different contractors, and we have been contracted by Sida to run the program. The initial target were 60 projects and 2.6 million euros. So why is Innovations Against Poverty needed? I think based on the discussions that we had today, it's very clear that inclusive business, if implemented in a good way, can have tremendous effects on development, both through if the projects themselves are successful, but even more so if they are replicated and inspires others to do it, to do similar things in other sectors, so we can have a systemic change. And I think if we look back, if we want an example, we look back 20, 30 years to where microfinance was at the time, and we compare that with where microfinance is today, I think you can start to understand what it is IAP wants to help achieve, because before you get to that point, you have a number of barriers that you have to cross over. Anything from lack of experience trying to deal with the outreach that we were talking about this morning, the last mile distribution, and not least lack of finance, the gaps. There is we talked about the gap in the middle before, and I think what IAP here is trying to fill is the gap in the beginning. There is really no one there to help you fund, help you share the risk of the very first few steps, piloting, proof of concept, that type of thing. We work with market-oriented organizations and companies. So an NGO wanting to go commercial, or a company wanting to increase or try out an inclusive business concept as part of their business are welcome to apply. any origin, any country, company of any origin can apply, but the benefit should be in a developing country. And then there are a few exceptions to what we fund. So what do we require? Well, innovation says in the name. Development impact, clearly, otherwise we're not fighting poverty. And we want them to be sustainable, the projects that we fund, and therefore commercial viability is very much the stamina of the project. We're also looking for cost sharing. 50% of the cost needs to come from the promoters of a project or other sources that are non-grant. And something that we call additionality, which can be difficult to explain, but I think there were some examples of additionality. The first that comes to mind, of course, is that without IAP funding, the project wouldn't have happened or would have taken longer to happen. But I think we had some cases here where the credibility of being associated with the program was also brought up as a key added value and a key additionality to projects. We do small grants of up to 20,000 euros, and those are typically, it really is the applicant that tells us what they want to use the money for, but typically you see them going to concept developments and piloting. And then we also provide larger grants where we have a two-step application process that go also to piloting, larger piloting, proof of concept kind of things, and implementation. After 18 months, we've gone through 3 cycles of application. We have 2 every year, one every 6 months. Actually, the present one closes today at midnight. So those of you who want to hand in an application and haven't done so yet, you have a few hours. We have 40 projects approved. As I said initially, we had a target of 60 in 6 cycles. We have 40 approved. We had a target of 2.6 million euros. We have already approved funding for 3 million, or Sida has approved funding for 3 million. It's about an equal balance between large and small grants. There was a big influx in the very first cycle and a larger number of projects granted. I think the reasons behind that can probably be seen in both there being actually a large demand for this type of funding, a large need out there, and many good projects that were just looking for this and were ready. And just when IAP came in, they sort of sent in their applications. It was sort of a shorter starting stretch for them because they had already been working on these projects. But also, I believe, I wasn't in the team at the time, that a certain amount of learning from that cycle took place in terms of the difficulties and the issues and the need to make sure that the parameters are in place if we're going to think that the project is going to be successful. We actually have, if we look over the 3 cycles, we've had over 600 applications, so an average of 200 per cycle. I think now we're looking, the last number I heard, we're looking at somewhere between 100 and 150 applications at least in this cycle, if the pattern repeats itself, that the last half comes in the last day. And as you see, the actual successful ones are down to about 6%. This might look very, very small, but I think you have to take that into consideration that this is, it's a challenge fund, it's a competition, it's the best of the best that gets the grants. And it is similar, to, if I understand it correctly, to other challenge funds, the numbers. But where do we see the issues? As I said, these are what we're looking for. And just sort of trying to, if we look at applicants coming from the south, the sunny, warm, yellow south, there are some issues coming into to play here, very much related to they understand the problem, they understand what needs to be done, and they have the outreach, but have difficulty sometimes to actually put that into a commercial viable proposition, and therefore the sustainability isn't there. Also, cost sharing can be an issue, because we are looking at for other funding to cover 50% of the cost. If we flip it and look at sort of northern-based applicants, issues such as, you know, they might have a business proposition and an innovative idea, but might not fully understand what it takes to implement that on the ground. They don't have the full understanding for the issues on the ground. Also additionality, because if we're looking at a large company, I think we can rightly question whether they actually do need the IAP funding. And then there is, I think, a common, also a very large element of understatement or lack of understanding of how much time it actually takes to bring a project to piloting stage, because a lot of our successful applicants have already been working for several years before they approach us. Where do we see the projects? As you see, we have a large number of projects in sub-Saharan Africa. This map looks as if we have a lot in Asia, but that's just because we have a project in China, and China is a big country, so it gets a big color blob on this one. But active countries include, of course, Eastern Africa with Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, Mozambique have 3 projects, and we have a large number of projects also in India. So very active areas, very active countries. This is one way of looking at the sectors, which is a very traditional way. As you see, it's relatively well spread among the projects. But actually this doesn't make much sense from our point of view, because how do you define, for example, Finaccess that we talked about this morning, or that we heard talking this morning? Are they an IT company or are they a financial company? Here they are in finance. But if we look at them slightly differently, we see that there is an overlap between the sectors. And many of our companies find themselves in the overlaps between sectors. And to a certain extent, it is when the thinking of different sectors meet that you can get innovation and you can find new solutions to problems. So a couple of projects that haven't been mentioned, some of them are represented here. Just to give you a flavor of what we do, what we have funded. Ignitia is it's a Swedish initiated project, but working in Ghana, where they provide weather forecast by SMS to local farmers, and therefore allow the farmers to better plan their work. And I understand from the promoter who's here today that they're doing quite well, which I'm really happy to hear about, because I do think that this is something that is replicable in a number of countries around the equator in Africa, and therefore could have tremendous impact in that area. Waste to energy, waste picking in Uganda, where the waste is turned into biogas. So it provides employment opportunities for waste pickers in the low-income communities, whilst producing energy as well. This is actually the only one of a relatively large company that we have, which is Global Sourcing and Supply, where they are trying to find ways of integrating low-income farmers into this supply chain for the large mining, oil and mining sectors in Ghana. So organizing them, developing the farming practices, etc. Nuri is one of our many energy projects. I think have a fair amount of renewable energy, where I think initially they went from the idea of using solar panels to charge portable lamps, and they have resorted to a very low-tech solution of a pedaled charging operation, which allows micro-entrepreneurs to develop with a charger and lamps that they then sell on to their villages, and then they charge, they sell chargers. Mackett Ruby Cup is a menstrual cup that is was actually brought to us by some students in Copenhagen. They sell this menstrual cup, which is durable. It can last up to 10 years, and it solves a lot of social issues for girls and women in the, primarily where they're rolling it out is in the Kibera slum area in Nairobi. And a couple of our colleagues were there a few weeks ago, heard stories about how the girls actually resort to prostitution to be able to pay for sanitary pads, etc. And by being able to buy this at a very low cost, something that will last them for 10 years, I think you can see there's a lot of ramifications, socioeconomic as well as environmental. High Nation Solar is, again, we have a lot of these different solar or renewable energy products. There we are. And this is again a solar charging technology that we are supporting in Zambia, and it is. You can see that we are not closing the door for one technology just because we're supporting another. I think it's a matter also of seeing who will come out the winner, who will actually be able to solve the key issues of, for example, the last mile, the things that we discussed this morning. So, as I said, we've been, this fall we have started to look at the portfolio from a portfolio perspective, trying to draw out some, what are the characteristics of the portfolio and what can we learn from it. You'll find much more in this report. But there are some key characteristics. In terms of the types of organizations that we support, most of them define themselves as social enterprises. That doesn't mean that they're not focusing. As we said, we're looking for commercial viability, so they definitely have a commercial focus, but very much with a social agenda. We are in the very early stages of project implementation with, especially in small grants, blueprint and design really are more than half of the companies. A little less so in the large grants, which is the outer circle, where a bit more of early operation and validation, sort of piloting and concept proofing is taking place. But yet, there's not so much where we actually see implementation yet, or even less scaling up, which would be the next stage. Our primary beneficiaries, our focus has actually been on trying to find consumer-oriented products or projects because they deliver the greatest developmental impact. But we also realize, or looking at it, that more than half of our projects have women as their primary beneficiaries, which I think is very good for many reasons, seeing how the economic dynamics works in developing countries. So we are very happy to see that this, although it hasn't, I don't think it's been a conscious focus, that's the way it's worked out. In terms of innovation, sometimes very hard to measure, but what we do is we look, all of these, we look at our projects and look at if we can feel that they have innovation at one or several of three different levels in their proposition. One is the actual product and service. Is that innovative? Or is the production innovative? Or even more so, the distribution and market and access to market. The companies here, this adds up to much more than the 40 that we have, but that's because you can be high both or medium in one and high in another. So what you see here is actually, we have a number of very high innovative, quite innovative companies, and also several that are rated medium in our rating. So the key question, is there a trade-off between development impact and commercial viability? I think that's one of the key questions that I think everyone would be interested to see, because it has been a barrier to others going into this. As I said, I've been in development banking for 10 years. And it's a struggle. Everyone wants to do development, but they don't think you can do it on a commercial footing. So what we have done is we've developed indices trying to measure development and classify the companies in low, middle, or high, and the same with commercial viability. And if we look at that, what plots, here we just plotted the large and small companies, it's large and small grants, I should say, against these two, where you actually don't see a trade-off between commercial viability as we expect it to. It's still early days, but our expectations is that a fair amount of our grantees have a fair chance of being at least moderately commercially viable, maybe not stars, but doing okay. And many of them have medium to even high potential development impact. So we don't really see that yet, but again, it's early days. Most of our projects are still in a concept proof stage. And the reason you see all the small grants here is sort of at the bottom low. One of the reasons is that they are even earlier stage, concept development. And when we, for example, measure commercial viability, we look at that within sort of the next 3 years or so. And if the earlier you are, the less likely you are to actually have reached break-even or being commercially viable over the next 3 years. So where are we? 18 months into the program? Well, on target in terms of numerical delivery, I would say. We have a diversified portfolio, and we're starting to learn some interesting lessons. We're going to continue developing that, and I would very much welcome engagement with the ones of you who are grappling with the same issues as we do, to see how we can sort of continue and refine our indices and continue and work with finding a way of measuring these three important components for us: innovation, development, and commercial viability. And we're beginning to see some indications of things that we can expect from the projects in our portfolio. And we're eager to see what happens next with IAP 2 and everything. So, and hope that we will be part of that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lena.